Chapter 61:26. Although Jacob indeed has no ability or real ability, he has always thought highly of himself for so many years. In front of his wife and daughter, he never admitted that he was inferior to anyone. Therefore, when he suddenly spoke in front of his wife and daughter and bluntly said that he was a piece of shit, both Elaine and Claire were shocked. Such words have not been heard from Jacob for decades. And Jacob himself was unwilling to say such words to ridicule himself. But before coming over, Charlie repeatedly confessed that this sentence must be said. And it must be said out loud. This is the real risk of death. Because Charlie was sure that these words were the key to him getting through the crisis this time. After Jacob said this, his heart was bleeding crazily. He felt that he was just putting his old face on the ground and stomping it to death, so as to dispel Elaine's suspicion of him and say that he was the one. He was a piece of shit and said that it was impossible for his sweetheart to think highly of him. This feeling made him extremely painful and inferior. But he knew that there was no turning back when the bow was fired. Maiqing had already missed it, and he could never lose Elaine again. Therefore, when Jacob saw that both Elaine and Claire were a little horrified, he could only adjust his mentality, gritted his teeth, and continued. A person as high as Maiqing can only see a piece of shit like me. How could a piece of shit like me have any ulterior motives when I cover my nose and take a detour? After saying that, he looked at Elaine and continued. Honey, there is no way in this world that someone like me can. If you don't want me, who else will? No one else likes me, so how can I cuckold you? Elaine saw Jacob's self-deprecating and sad look, coupled with the look on his face seeing the blood marks scratched by herself. She completely believed Charlie's words in her heart. At this moment, she suddenly felt guilty and distressed for Jacob. It turned out that Jacob kept it secret from her because he didn't want her to be stimulated by Maiqing. And after listening to Charlie's words, she also knew that the gap between herself and Maiqing was too big. If they really met, they would probably not be able to recover in 10 years. Looking at Jacob's face, which was scratched to pieces by her, she felt even more guilty. And the balance in her heart was completely reversed. She looked at the self-deprecating Jacob with red eyes and choked up. Husband, when I asked you in the car, why didn't you tell me the truth? If you told me the truth, how could I fight with you? When Jacob heard this, his colleagues who were relieved in their hearts couldn't help but sigh to themselves. What the FCK, if I had Charlie's brains and eloquence and could think of such a sophistry? I would of course have followed him. If you tell me, I won't be beaten to pieces by you. However, he said with emotion, hey, I still don't want you to know these things. We are all ordinary people. How can we be like other successful people? So I hope you don't know these things in your life. So that you won't be stimulated, have a broken mentality, and live our own lives in a down-to-earth manner. After that, he said with some relief, what Charlie just said is right. In fact, I am not worthy of a woman like Maiqing at all. She and I are not even from the same world at all. I am just an ordinary useless old man who has no ability or level and likes to go everywhere. A show-off face-loving old loser? You suspected that I had cuckolded you. I also want to thank you for thinking so highly of me. If anyone else heard about this, they would probably ask me, Jacob, are you worthy? After that, he looked at Elaine and choked up, wife, I also want to thank you. In the eyes of others, I am a loser, a waste, and a piece of shit. In your eyes, I have become a person who can make a fortune. A billionaire rich woman traveled thousands of miles to rekindle her old relationship with a scumbag. Wife, you may be the only one in this world who thinks so highly of me and treats me like a treasure. Elaine couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable when she heard him ridiculing her like this. She quickly said, okay, Jacob, stop saying that you are a piece of shit. We are just ordinary people living at home. They are rich and have more money than us. Although we couldn't compare to the rich people in their days, our life is not that bad now. I have the self-awareness to know that I can't compare to her in all aspects. After saying that, Elaine took the initiative to step forward, put her arm around him, raised his arm, and said, okay, What happened just now was all my fault. You were so kind to take care of my emotions. But I still treated you like a donkey. Don't worry, I won't mention this matter again in the future. Just pretend it never happened. Don't bear a grudge against me, okay? When Jacob heard this, he was completely relieved. After the disaster, he said from the bottom of his heart, "How could it be? I will definitely not bear a grudge against you." Elaine nodded excitedly and said, "Look, my daughter has been in the United States for so long. And she finally came back today. Let's not make people laugh here. Let's go home." Jacob was relieved and nodded heavily, with tears in his eyes. He said, "Okay. Let's go home." After that, the two of them held each other's arms affectionately and walked out. Claire was dumbfounded, and Charlie wiped away cold sweat. This was to risk his life again. It seems that it was really successful. Elaine will definitely not mention Mai Ching again in the future, and will even try every means to avoid meeting her. In this way, what he said will not be misleading. Claire on the side came to her senses and said in a low voice, "Husband, you are so awesome." Charlie sneered, "I can't help it, for the sake of family harmony, I am no more embarrassed." Claire held his arm and said happily, "Sacrifice the small self to achieve the greater self. Husband, you have done a great job." At this time, the traffic police outside saw the two people who were fighting hard just now and came out holding hands. Everyone rubbed their eyes in disbelief. The traffic policeman handling the case subconsciously asked, You two are not going to fight again?" Elaine quickly shook her head and said, "If we don't fight, we will not cause trouble to our comrades in the traffic police." After saying that, she gave a rare bow to them. Jacob also said quickly, "Comrade traffic police, don't worry, I will never stop on the highway again." The traffic policeman nodded subconsciously and said, "As long as you know, you only have 3 points left on your driver's license. Take it easy. If you don't have the buckle, you have to study." Jacob nodded repeatedly, "Don't worry, I will strictly abide by the road traffic laws in the future and won't cause any trouble to you." The family of Fa left the traffic police station one after another. And Charlie moved Claire's luggage. After getting in the car, Elaine said, "Good son-in-law, go drive the car, and let your dad rest in the back." Charlie nodded and sat in the front row with Claire, while Jacob and Elaine sat in the back row. As the car drove out, Charlie saw in the rearview mirror Elaine touching the wound on Jacob's face with a distressed expression and whispered, "Honey, does it hurt?" "I'm sorry." Jacob was really touched in his heart. In addition, what he said just now made him completely lose his previous inexplicable sense of superiority. And his attitude towards Elaine also changed a lot. So, he shook his head and said, "It's okay, it doesn't hurt." After saying that, he subconsciously reached out and held Elaine's hand quietly. And a trace of blush flashed across Elaine's face. Elaine also squeezed Jacob's hand and said very seriously, "You are my husband. You will never say that you are a piece of shit again. Not under any circumstances. Do you understand?" Jacob didn't know if he was really moved or not. He nodded repeatedly with red eyes, "Okay, wife, I understand."